All right, guys, come to you with another live video. Sorry it took so long, but the reason for this video is because I was reading a book um, about one of the famous Haitian revolutionaries, Henry Christophe, and the thing is that um, the initial plan after the revolution was to make Haiti a self-sustaining, self-sufficient island. Um, and they had to do it, unfortunately, through I guess what you will call, I won't call it hard labor, but rigorous labor. And the thing is you were dealing with a population that just came out of slavery. So when you have, for example, the leadership telling you you have to go work and toe the field for the betterment of the country, and it appears like that towing the field is like slavery. Of course you're going to have issues, not to mention when the country that you won your freedom from is charging you and asking for reparations, and basically holding reparations over your head, saying that they will walaikum salam rahmatullah, saying that they will invade your country if you basically don't pay them the reparations. So you're dealing with all these factors. Now, the thing is IAT, if it had a standing military, basically, and it made use of the resources that it had, it would be the most powerful country in the Atlantic. And the reason being that it has more resources than the United States. It has, I would dare to say, more people who would basically basically be fit to fight for the land. You know what I mean? So they're still discovering resources there. Now, as it pertains to Africa, well, let's just keep it with IET first. Uh, in IET, there were groups called maroons, and the word maroon comes from cimarron, which means like wild horse. Those were the slaves that hid up in the mountains and did insurgencies in the mountains, basically. Those are the slaves that you were dealing with. And so the thing is about in those insurgencies is that they went rogue, okay? Sometimes meaning rogue means they would burn down whole villages. Uh, excuse me. Sometimes going rogue means that they would just like do a lot of things that they shouldn't have done, but they did anyway, you know, in terms of like letting people know that they're not playing around. Now, in addition to that, it was one of the reasons how they got their freedom was that rogue behavior. Now, the downside of this and the downside of revolution, this is the downside of revolution, okay? The downside of revolution is that usually after the revolution, you have to build your country up, back up again. And it's like you, the country is torn apart. You went through all these things, and now you have to build it back up. And now even sometimes the world is not going to recognize your country as a sovereign state. So these are some of the challenges that you will face as a new nation. You know what I mean? Um, the only reason why America was so able to do it so good was for the simple fact that America came from the strongest, one of the strongest colonial powers you can imagine, and that was I want to say Great Britain. You know, the United Kingdom. So they already came from, like, I want to say a a strong base. Now, you look at you look at all developing nations, you look at maybe Eritrea, you look at let's just throw Rwanda in there. Let's throw Nigeria in there. Let's throw all of these kind of places in there. You look at what they had to go through and how debt slavery has kept them from really excelling in rebuilding their country. You know what I mean? Because yes, Nigeria experienced civil war. Nigeria had to gain its independence from Britain. Um, After that independence, Britain gaslight a civil war, and I don't know who. I'm of the opinion they funded the Biafra separatists, and that's how, when you had just a bloody conflict altogether. You know what I mean? Where many people died, and they tried. And the thing is, if we want to be technical, Britain is or Nigeria is a British creation. You know what I mean? And so, you know, the Biafra separatists were saying, we want our own state versus others who say, no, we want to keep Nigeria together, although it was a British creation. You know what I mean? That's what was happening. So when we look at these places, they have one thing in common, and that's debt. Another thing they have in common is um, natural resources. Another thing they have in common is destabilization. And the thing is, and it's going to take a while to do this, but the main thing lacking in these places, walaikum salam rahmatullah. The main thing lacking in these places is a military. I'm pretty sure that if IAT had like a military, a standing military, if IAT if um if IAT had a, like, let's just say special forces, um then you would probably see a different outlook. The gangs wouldn't be in control like they are. For example, many people don't know this, but many of the gang leaders have US citizenship. Many of the guns that come from the Haitian gang leaders are from the United States. The reason why is they know that with this destabilization of Haiti, they are able to keep it in control. Whereas if they had like the correct leadership in IAT, it would be from under the grasp of the United States. And that seems to be the problem right there, is the fact that, the United States is basically still in grasp of these places because of the simple fact that it used its tactics of debt slavery, it used its tactics of destabilization, it used all these tactics, and unfortunately these tactics work most of the time, you know. um and so that's why Africa does need to go rogue and go maroon, meaning that it needs to really nationalize and industrialize, because once you nationalize you have control over your resources, and once you industrialize you have a military industrial complex. You know what I mean? That's why the United States wouldn't dare attack Iran, because they have nuclear weapons. You know what I mean? They wouldn't f with Iran. You know, the only reason why they went to Libya is because Gaddafi gave up his weapons, his chemical weapons, which was a mistake. That was a mistake through by him. And so I think that more countries need to follow, and more African nations need to follow behind, basically going rogue, going in the different direction that the West wants them to go in. Because if they do that, they'll find that they'll be able to industrialize quicker, and they'll be able to possibly give everybody a fair shake instead of everybody having to leave. You know what I mean? That's the main thing about it. Now, I want to go ahead and jump straight into this. I don't want to be long-winded, and show why Africa does need to go rogue or maroon. You know what I mean? Um, I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to start with the out the out we're going to start with the extension of Africa outside of the African continent. Now, I will forewarn you, I am not a Pan-Africanist. I am an African nationalist, okay, of my respected country. But I'm also, I guess, what you can say, when I say African nationalist, I mean that my whole concern is uh, self-sufficiency for not only my country, but Africa as a whole. You know what I mean? And if that self-sufficiency must be built upon by having allies who are not black, then so be it. So that's what makes me different from the quote unquote Pan Africanists. As long as those allies are meeting us with mutual benefits in mind. But let's continue. So the first video I want to go over is this one, where there was the brother, I think he played in the Mortal Kombat movie. He breaks it all down, uh and about Haiti, and it's really interested. Let me see. I gotta find it. Okay, here we go.
Haiti is the poorest country in the world. However, you might be very surprised to find out why Haiti.
Now, I want to say that Haiti is not the poorest country in the world. It's one of the richest countries in the world. The problem is, it's one of the most poorly managed countries in the world, because you have Western people there who essentially run the country. The Haitians don't even run their own country, truthfully speaking. But let's continue.
Haiti is the poorest country in the world. Haiti was one of the richest places on the planet in the 1700s. Population of Haiti was 4-to-1 slave to free Frenchmen. So you basically had about.
Keep in mind that Haiti was producing half of the sugar of the world at that time. Also, keep in mind, Haiti was producing a majority of the coffee of the world at that time as well.
450,000 slaves there, and 120,000, 125,000 free Frenchmen and women. Led by a slave named Toussaint, Haiti successfully overthrew one of the most powerful armies on the planet in 18.
Now, not only did they overthrow one of the most powerful armies of the planet, they threw over powerful armies of the planet. They overthrew they whooped the French's they whooped the French, they whooped the Spanish, and they whooped the British. And my personal favorite revolutionaries, of course, is Toussaint, but it was also Jean-Jacques Dessalines that I liked, and there was also Henry Christophe, who I like as well.
1804 and declared their independence. However, France made a deal with them with warships at the ready, saying that we will invade you, recapture you, and re enslave you unless you pay for the lost property. Well, that lost property was the human lives of the Haitians themselves. So France slapped Haiti with a $21 billion bill. That's $21 billion in today's money. It took until 1947 to pay off the initial loan. It took Haiti almost 150 years to pay off that loan. And obviously, you guys know about loans and financing. And
Again, debt slavery, which is what's doing Africa in so much, is debt slavery. Okay. Putin just forgave our debt though, because there was a lot of debt racked up in Soviet Union times during Cold War times because we had to get our independence. But Putin just forgave the debt. Now, now with that being said, uh this is how they get us. It's debt slavery.
debt. So, how did Haiti pay that money off? Especially because France forced them to give them 50% off of their products. So, Haiti was accounting for three-fourths of the world's sugar at the time. And I think a quarter or maybe one-third of the entire slave trade at the time. Saint Domingue was also known as the capital of the slave trade in the West Indies, and also the worst place for a slave to end up because it was so brutal, torturous, and you could be raped and kidnapped at any point in time and sent anywhere in the world. So that debt was financed and collected by French banks, as well as an American bank that was established in 1812, which is called Citibank. That's right. Your bank has been collecting money from Haitian people to pay for their own freedom since 1812 and stopped only in 1947.
So if you have any moral compass, you won't bank with Citibank then. You won't like if you have any kind of like, because even me, when I found out that Coca-Cola supports Israel, I did my best to try not to drink any Coca-Cola products. So you'll do your best to do the same.
With the natural resources and the people working the land that Haiti had, it should have been one of the richest countries in the world. But the transfer of wealth from Haiti to France and Haiti to French banks and Haiti to American banks to finance what is called the independence debt, which is no more than a debt for the descendants of slavery to continue to pay the countries and the people that enslaved them.
In essence, they're paying for their freedom, literally. But rather than paying for their freedom in it, no, they're paying for their freedom double time. They're not only paying for their freedom, they not only pay for their freedom through the blood, sweats, and tears, but they're also paying for their freedom through financially paying for their freedom.
For their own freedom. It's well documented. It's well documented that the debt was based on slave owners losing their property. In 2004, the Haitian government demanded that France pay back the billions of dollars that it forced the Haitian people to pay for its own freedom. So think about this. It's like France had their warships ready, just basically gangstered their way into Haiti's pockets. After Haiti beat the French military in 1804, by 1825, France had warships at the ready off the coast of Haiti, looking at the island like, nice island you got there. Be a real shame if something happened to it. Okay. So basically, France is like, nice island you got there. Nice freedom you've gained there. Be ashamed if something happened to it. Wow. That's the most gangster, ridiculous, disgraceful shit I've ever heard in my life. In 2004, the Haitian government demanded that France pay back the billions of dollars it paid to protect its own borders and to be a sovereign nation.
So the thing is, when you say see Haitians by the boatload, it's not necessarily their choice that they're going there by the boatload. It's just that, for any immigrant that leaves, even me, like even me being sent to the West, it wasn't like my choice to be sent to the West. It was just that, like, due to like these similar reasons that this brother is talking about, it was just out of necessity, you know, because like when you have former colonial people still like taking advantage of your country because your country is too weak to defend itself, then this is what happens. As a matter of fact, the United States also occupied Haiti for a little bit. I think they did a lot of horrible things in that occupation as well. you know it's really a bad situation. So the thing is about America and Europe, it really is not on any moral compass to big up its country when the way that its country is functioning is largely based off of the 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 deaths, the blood, the sweat, and the tears of people who typically are either dark skinned or brown skinned.
Can you imagine if you had to pay somebody so that they wouldn't attack you? If you had to pay somebody so that they wouldn't enslave you? If you had to pay somebody because your great grandparents had been kidnapped and held hostage, and the price that you had to pay for a free life was billions of dollars to the people who did it? I'm trying to wrap my head around what that would feel like. And I guess you have to ask a Haitian person. Wow, France, really? Really? And after the Haitian government demanded that France pay back the billions of dollars that it unfairly had to pay to France to keep their sovereignty, to keep their freedom, to keep their lives, 11 years later in 2015, France said, fuck you.
And I just want to point out something about France. France is one of the most feminist, leftist countries in the world. I have family that lives in France, um, and like they'll present themselves as enlightened and stuff like that. But truthfully speaking, they would not be able to function without Africa. They would be like, how Donald Trump said it's an ish-hole country. That's how France would be without Africa. That's how a lot of Europe would be without Africa, truthfully speaking. You know, it would really be like that. Now let's go ahead and continue on with what this brother is saying.
Really, France? Wow. That's not going to age well. So if you've ever wondered why Haiti's so poor, ask France. This is the most egregious and famous independence debt that the Caribbean has had to pay to its former enslavers. But it's not the only one. Just imagine where this world would be if Black people didn't have to pay back the children of the enslavers. Now, I really want you to think about that for a second. Where would this world be if the descendants of slaves didn't have to pay back the descendants of the slave owners? The descendants of slaves had to pay back a debt to the people who enslaved them and their children and their children and their descendants. Where would we be if that ridiculous shit never happened? Where would Haiti be right now if France gave them back the $21 billion that they gave them for their lives and their freedom? People refer to reparations as if it's not owed, as if it's a controversial stance. However, nobody said shit when Haiti had to pay $21 billion just to keep their lives. So somehow it's controversial that the descendants of the people who were held hostage and kidnapped want to be paid for their troubles, want to be paid for the injustices done to their ancestors, and how those injustices play out and manifest in our lives today. There needs to be repair of that. However, that's a controversial issue, but it's not a controversial issue for some reason that the Haitian people and several other islands in the Caribbean had to pay back the slave owners and the slave owners' descendants for loss of property. Is it starting to sink in?
Now, me, I don't have like really a say in the reparations. I wouldn't apply for reparations, but it is like asked backwards, how things go and things like that, and how it's like a double standard that it was okay for them to ask for reparations, but then all of a sudden, like when another group of people wants to ask for it, then it's like swept under the rug. Yeah, it's double standards, it's hypocrisy. And yeah, um, for example, it's just double standards all around. Like the West has invaded so many countries, but when Russia decides to exercise a military exercise against Ukraine, all of a sudden it's a problem. But it wasn't a problem when you invaded different countries or when you destabilized governments. You know what I mean? So please make it make sense, you know?
I don't know what the answer is, but if you're French, I highly recommend that you reach out to your government and tell them to give Haiti their money back. It's fucking disgraceful. I love you guys. I'm just being honest.
Thank you for being honest, bro. Now let's look at the five poorest countries in the world, okay? What do they all have in common? They're all black countries. What else do they have in common? They all were colonized. What else do they have in common? Most of them had leaders that were forward thinking and wanted to bring good to that country. Now let's look at the 10 poorest countries in the world and see if anything changes. Another West African country, Chad. Another West African country, Liberia. Niger, another West African country, rich in resources though. the Democratic Republic of Congo, we know what happened there. Rich in resources, your PS5, your our cell phones, our tablets come from material in this place. Central Africa Republic. What's over there? Diamonds. So as you see, the unfortunately the poorest countries in the world are all black countries. Unfortunately. I don't know what happened there, but yes. But as you see, all of the countries are black countries that are the poorest. Okay. So now let's look at another situation in another scenario, which goes to show why Africa needs to go in maroon mode.
democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York, joined by Democracy Now! Co-host Juan Gonzalez in New Brunswick, New Jersey. While bankers in France and the United States made a fortune. The story dates back to the early 19th century. In 1804, the enslaved people of Haiti rose up, leading a rebellion against French colonial rule, founding the world's first Black republic. Under military threat from France in 1825, Haiti agreed to pay reparations to France for lost so-called property, including enslaved people that French owners lost in the rebellion. France threatened to invade Haiti and reimpose slavery if Haiti did not agree to a staggering amount in reparations, 150 million francs, 30 times Haiti's annual revenue. Haiti began taking.
So there's no way you're going to get ahead if you have to pay 30 times a country's revenue. How in the hell are you going to get ahead? And that's the same thing with Africa. Debt trap after debt trap after debt trap. That's why Eritrea is probably the model forward, because of the simple fact that it is trying its best to stay debt free. Okay. And it's not trying to take foreign aid. Okay. And we're going to get into that too.
Taking out loans from French banks, leading to an economic crisis that continues through to this day. Haiti began taking out loans from French banks.
So, as bad as it sounds, it's even worse, because now you're in a situation where you're paying the people who oppressed you back, but you're borrowing money from the people who oppressed you to pay it back, and then they're going to charge you interest. So you're in, essentially, it's just a debt trap all around the board,
leading to an economic crisis that continues through to this day. The New York Times estimates Haiti paid the equivalent of what's now $560 million to France over the next 7 decades. The true economic cost to Haiti is estimated to be an astounding $115 billion. And that only tells a part of the story. In 1880, a French bank established Haiti's first national bank, essentially putting France in control of Haiti's treasury. That bank, Crédit Industriel et Commercial, used some of its massive profits to help finance the Eiffel Tower. The bank's current owner has just launched an investigation into its dealings with Haiti and its role in what's called the ecosystem of colonialism, that bank, CIC. The Time series also looks at the U.S. military occupation of Haiti that lasted from 1915 to 1934. A key backer of the U.S. occupation was the National City Bank of New York, the predecessor of Citibank.
So again, if you bank with Citibank, cut all ties. Please. Just cut the ties.
Former U.S. diplomat Patrick Gaspard, who now heads the Center for American Progress, has called on Citigroup to pay reparations to Haiti. Gaspard wrote on Twitter, "A silent scream has been in throats for decades about the role U.S. played in depleting Haiti. No one would listen. Finally, some truths," he said. Over the years, Haitian demands for reparations have been repeatedly shut down, sometimes with force. France's former ambassador to Haiti, Thierry Boucard, admitted to the New York Times that France and the United States effectively orchestrated the 2004 coup that ousted Haiti's first democratically elected president, Jean-Bertrand Aristide. Boucard said one benefit of the coup was that it ended Aristide's campaign demanding France pay financial reparations to Haiti. To talk more about Haiti and the devastating impact of colonialism in this massive series in the New York Times, we're joined by two guests. Weston Lee Alsanat is a Haitian-American professor at Fordham University, where he teaches courses on the Atlantic slave trade, the American abolition movement, and Afro-Caribbean history. Gerald Horne also joins us. He's professor of history and African-American studies at the University of Houston, author of many books, including Confronting Black Jacobins, the U.S., the Haitian Revolution, and the Origins of the Dominican Republic. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Professor Alsanat, let's begin with you. So this series has come out in the New York Times to both criticism and praise. It's come out in both Creole and in English. That's a first for the New York Times. Can you explain the significance of what many are calling revelations, at least to the general public, but certainly people in Haiti have been alleging for centuries, not only alleging, but of course, having proof of this?
Yes, thank you, Amy. Thank you for having me today. I'm glad to be here in conversation with you. So first, let me start by saying that a great acknowledgement to the many reporters and producers who put this very special issue together, and to have given it a front time exposure, it will mean a lot. Not really for Haitians per se, because the facts that are being revealed throughout the report are very well known, even to the most illiterate Haitian, and even to the youngest Haitian growing up. In fact, given the level of underdevelopment that is prevalent in Haiti today, one knows, at least the Haitian people knows, that this could have only been the legacy of an external force, rather of their own making. So I think the significance of the piece will be that it exposes the rest of the world to a knowledge that actually has existed for over 100 years and shares multiple partners, both in the private sector with regards to the financial industry, as well as the United States government, Germany, Great Britain, and most certainly and most influential France, having played a role in imposing the debt that in many ways will explain Haiti's poverty today. So I welcome the piece. I think it's great in terms of the many research that it brought together, both from academic literature that had already existed, as well as new revelations that are coming up. But in terms of calling it revelations, that would be a misnomer. I myself have written very extensively on the subject. Many other fellow academics, historians have written about it. There have been movements over the decades to get the United States, France, and the other parties responsible for this to get them to some accountability. And I believe a large reason why this never got the fair sort of ear of listening that it should have gotten is because it's coming from Haitians, who many people view as sort of the Africans of the Western Hemisphere, but which is an identity that Haitians proudly wear.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it is that when you encounter Haitians and stuff like that, those are some of the more like they're more of the like chill Caribbean type. And I think the reason why they're more of the chill Caribbean type is because they went through revolution. I noticed there's certain like Caribbeans who are like more westernized than others, and Haitians don't really tend to be like that much. Yeah, you do have that. I would say like my greatest comrades in the Caribbean came from Grenada and Haiti. Usually Jamaicans, for the most part, lean more towards the westernized because of the simple fact that they really didn't have revolution in their country. They really didn't have that. I mean, I guess you can say like post-colonial revolution, you know. But let's continue.
Wear proudly for reasons that reasonably make sense for it in terms of the freedom that they fought and established for all Black people.
Yeah, I'd like to bring in Professor Gerald Horne to the conversation, another historian who has covered the issue of colonialism, imperialism, and slavery throughout the Americas for decades. I too had the same feeling that a lot of this is only new to people who haven't paid attention to the history of the Western Hemisphere over the last several hundred years. I'm wondering your reaction to the piece, because the Times really is delving into history much more than news. I think the most interesting aspect of it was the particular individuals in France and the institutions that directly benefited from the ransom that Haiti was forced to pay. But largely, this is history that is known by people who know any part of the history of Latin America and of the Western Hemisphere. So I'm wondering your reaction to the piece as a historian who studied this carefully.
Well, first of all, I would urge and encourage the New York Times to follow through with their point that they have uncovered new documents by putting these documents online so that other historians can take advantage of their excavations, and or secondly, placing them at the New York Times archive, which I believe has been cited at the New York Public Library. But I think that the story also is of significance and of moment for us in the United States, for we in the United States, because there has been this myth that has been created that the United States and the Haitian Revolution were twins, even though we know, as I begin my book on the Haitian Revolution, George Washington, the founding father of this country, was quite nervous about the eruption in Haiti in August 1791.
And so was Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson was very nervous about it. As a matter of fact, I think Thomas Jefferson, he has some very derogatory terms for Black people, and especially the Haitians that did what they did, you know. So this is what I'm saying. Like the thing is, what they try to do is they try to make these people out to be heroes, and they make the people who were heroes out to be villains. Like they make Jean-Jacques Dessalines out to be a villain. They make Toussaint Louverture out to be a villain. They make Henry Christophe out to be a villain. And really what it is that they were just operating within their circumstances as it stood.
And this was understandable because the Haitian Revolution, culminating in 1804, led to a general crisis of the entire slave system in the Americas that could only be resolved with its collapse. Therefore, the United States was probably second to France in being an antagonist of the Haitian people. From their point of view, this was a reaction to the fact that many of the slave revolts in the United States had Haitian fingerprints all over them. I'm speaking of Gabriel's Revolt in Virginia in 1800, the Revolt in Louisiana circa 1811, Denmark Vesey about a decade later in South Carolina. In fact, Vesey had sailed in and out of Haiti before that eruption in Charleston, South Carolina. And then, culminating this hostility to Haiti, there is substantial evidence to suggest that when the island that we refer to as Hispaniola was split in 1844 with the secession from Haiti of what became the Dominican Republic, that this was an early success for U.S. covert operations. So this story in the New York Times is of significance for we in the United States. Hopefully, it will cause us to re-examine the history of this country and move away from the propaganda point that somehow the United States was an abolitionist republic when actually it was the foremost slaveholders republic.
Yeah, it was. I mean, most of the presidents held slaves. You know what I mean? The Civil War had nothing to do with like abolishing slavery. You know, all that happened is that they said we're going to use the manpower of the slaves in order to meet their goal. You know, that's all they did. That's all they did. It had nothing to do with it had nothing to do with uh you know, freeing people. It had nothing to do with that. You have to understand that.
Very special issue together, and to have given it a front time exposure, it will mean a lot. Not really for Haitians per se, because the facts that are being revealed throughout the report are very well known, even to the most illiterate Haitian.
All right. Let's see if I can find one more video about why Haiti is poor.
So as we go to further in history, we talk about what happened 2 centuries ago, then the rise of democracy in Haiti with the first election of President Aristide. Talk about the effect, and you're a doctor, you can also talk about the health effects. What happened, and you've written about this as well, when Aristide was deposed the first time? He was ousted twice, in 1991 and 2004, and what it meant for this country, for the health of this country, 91 to 94, how many people died, and the politics of how this keeps happening.
Well, you know, many thousands of people surely lost their lives in that violent period between the coup in 1991 and the restoration of constitutional order. But I would say that that's only a fraction of the cost, and in a fraction of the cost in lives, because the chronic instability of Haiti is clearly related to our inability to build strong water systems, for example, to go back to cholera. These are causally related events. And so the cost of these two coups against democratic process are greater than is appreciated because they make it very difficult to govern or I mean, that sounds like a very heavy-handed term, make it difficult to govern. What I mean is things like roads and sewage and public schools and communications, all of these infrastructures do require some semblance of safety and security and order. We've had trouble in recent months delivering basic services because of instability, political instability on the border with the Dominican Republic. This is on the Haitian side. So, I mean, I would argue, to summarize, I would say that public health requires some semblance of social security and human security that you really don't have when you're having repeated coups and inability to put in place governments. You can deliver medical services on a battlefield. You can transfuse blood and do surgery and do amputations. You can do it in the middle of an earthquake. But that's not the same as building strong public health systems. That requires something else.
On page 28, I think, of your book, of Haiti after the earthquake, you note that the coup of February 2004 further weakened the public health infrastructure, saying, quote, Haiti's president and his wife, the latter our staunchest advocate in the fight against AIDS, were spirited away to the Central African Republic in a way that resembled nothing so much as the extraordinary renditions of suspected terrorists described in the popular press. Haiti's elected government was replaced by a group of unelected officials,
So keep in mind that the Central African Republic, again, is one of the hot spots for diamonds and things like that. The French was very much in control of that too. So now you're in the scenario basically that they're interconnected, and basically I have a feeling that it was an inside job, but the fact that the Central African Republic took him in tells you everything you need to know.
elected by Haitians in any case, and the prime minister was tossed in jail without charges. It was a dispiriting time in large part because of the lies and distortions that figured prominently in many official policies, including some of my own country. Can you talk about the U.S. role? I mean, it was the U.S. that put him on the plane that sent the Aristides off to the Central African Republic. They didn't return until 7.5 years later, just in these last few months.
Well, the U.S. role was central, and you reported on this from Central African Republic and elsewhere. For those of us in Haiti at the time, or in and around Haiti, I was not in Haiti on that day. I was actually seeing patients in Boston in the hospital, and it was like a slow motion disaster unfolding over many months, and it was clear that this, I called it an aid embargo, and again, that's disputed. You could call it whatever you want. It was an attempt to destabilize or undermine that government, which had been elected again. In fact, as I point out in this book, every time the Haitians have gone to vote in large numbers between the overthrow of the dictatorship in 1986 and more recently, they've always voted for the same people. And I have to assume that they know what they're doing. In fact, I have a very healthy respect for the Haitians with whom I've been living and working. And I think it's a big mistake for another government, I'm referring to my own, to undermine their ability to choose who they want as their leader. And even if I didn't like the people they were electing, I would still think, call me old-fashioned, but this idea of one person, one vote is a good one.
Well, let's talk about this and the Famille Lavalas Aristides Party being excluded. As you said in March, Democracy Now! Covered ousted Haitian President Jean-Bertrand Aristide when he returned to Haiti from South Africa, where he was in exile for more than 7 years. We went on the plane when he landed in Port-au-Prince, and at the airport, he was greeted by thousands of supporters. He addressed the crowd quote, in a number of languages. When he spoke in English, he said, exclusion is the problem, inclusion is the solution, not directly referencing his party, Famille Lavalas, which was excluded from the election. But when he addressed the Haitians in Creole, in their language, he was much more explicit.
You are right. If we don't salvage our dignity will be gone. Yes, you are right, because the problem is exclusion, and the solution is inclusion. The exclusion of Famille Lavalas is the exclusion of the majority.
So, you know, in order for a country to work, you're going to have to include its citizens to build. You're gonna have to like basically include those citizens to for nation building. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna have to include them in the process. And when you look at it, Haiti has not done that because the thing is about the whole situation is you're gonna get dis you're gonna get dissatisfaction from the citizens. And so when this man is calling for group participation across the board, then of course that's going to be needed. But of course, it's not going to be welcomed by the United States. It's not going to be welcomed by the people who don't share his complexion. But let's continue.
The exclusion of the majority means that you are cutting off exactly the branch that we are all sitting on. The problem is exclusion. The solution is inclusion of all Haitians without discrimination, because everybody is a person.
That was President Jean-Bertrand Aristide, March 18th, just a few months ago, on the tarmac at the airport in Port-au-Prince, saying that his party, the most popular party, was excluded from the elections. And then you have now the election of the new president, Martelly, under those conditions. What effect does that have on the people of Haiti?
Well, I mean, I just was reading that that there was I want to speak a little bit in sociological terms, if I can. I know that sounds typically professorial and like a cop-out. I don't mean it that way at all. But just thinking about, again, public health. Public health requires some degree of, as I said, of stability. And there are various kinds of stability. I personally don't believe the idea that, you can oppress people or rule them from above. I don't think it's something that lasts or works. So that's not really the kind of stability I'm talking about. I'm talking about the stability that comes from inclusion and participation. I think that's a sound way to proceed. And I guess I'm saying that as just a human being, not so much as a physician. The recovery of Haiti requires, as I said, a very substantial engagement from all Haitians and inclusion. Otherwise, you have this chronic instability, and it's very difficult to get things done. And I think that's what Haiti's facing now is very low levels of engagement from the population. As you know, very few people bothered to be involved in this last round of elections because of exclusion or the belief that their wishes weren't going to be taken seriously anyway.
And I hate to say it, but America kind of follows the same model when you think about it, because, like, for example, we can say that we want taxes to stop, or lower taxes. We can say, like, for example, we want the alphabet soup agenda to stop, but chances are our wishes are not going to be met. They're going to still do what they want to do anyway. Like, when it really comes down to it, there isn't really any participation in this country in terms of like on the political realm. That's why, me personally, I don't bother to vote.
Okay. And even watching from outside as a layperson who's not involved in politics directly, again, sociologically, I don't think that's a good way to proceed.
I mean, it doesn't sound like apathy at all, having been there and spoken with many people as well. And as you probably have found, people were angry. They were angry they didn't feel represented. So that brings us to WikiLeaks. I just came back from London, where I was moderating a discussion with Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks. But there is this trove of WikiLeaks documents that relate to Haiti. And Kim Ives of Haiti Liberté and Dan Coughlin who has been writing for The Nation have been analyzing these WikiLeaks documents around Haiti. And I wanted to go to the one around the elections. The WikiLeaks released 2,000 classified U.S. diplomatic cables on Haiti. The Haitian and The Nation and Liberté have been publishing them. One cable shows how the United States, the European Union, and the United Nations supported Haiti's recent presidential and parliamentary elections, despite concerns over the exclusion of Haiti's largest party, Famille Lavalas, the party of Aristide. So this is Dan Coughlin, co-author of the Nation report on Democracy Now! Just a few weeks ago.
What these cables show, Amy, is really remarkable. It's like the curtain being pulled from behind the Wizard of Oz. Really inside look at what the U.S. policy is in Haiti, the materially poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. So they're blocking a preferential trade deal with Venezuela that means huge stability for the Haitian country.
Now, keep in mind, Haiti at one time got Venezuela free. You know, they helped Venezuela gain independence from the Spanish. You know, that was something that they did. However, since Venezuela decided to adapt a different system of governance, the United States has had it out for them as well. You know, they won't let Venezuela. Um, they have put it upon themselves not to let Venezuela be great. You know what I mean? Um, and they've done that with many sanctions, and they've done that at one point in time, military combat. Like they were trying to militarily involve themselves in Venezuela, but of course Venezuela was a couple of steps ahead, so they weren't allowed to do that. Although they tried it, they tried their best.
For the Haitian people, stable electricity supply, $100 million in extra funding for the government, which they use for social programs. We see the manipulation, extraordinary manipulation of Haiti's presidential election where, quote unquote, the international community recognizes that the opposition is emasculated. So why are we bothering to have an election if the most popular political party has been banned? And you see in these cables, the Canadians and others are like a little concerned. Hey, how are we going to have an election here? And literally, the head of the EU in Haiti, the head of the UN, the head of the Spanish ambassador, the Brazil.
He even called it emasculated, and that's essentially what we do. Unfortunately, as Africans, is that we allow ourselves to be emasculated by these people. You know what I mean? The thing is that yes, their economic level is very high, but other than that, there's nothing else very high about them, which is why, you know, again, I stress military. That's really the only thing that is lacking with us is military. Okay, if we were, I'm of the opinion that if we were to have a military, okay, a solid military with what's needed, they wouldn't be able to mess with us. They would not, they wouldn't like, they basically wouldn't have anything to do with us, okay? The only thing they would be able to do is sanction us, of course. You know, they're known for that. We can count on them to sanction us, right? We can definitely count on them for those sanctions. Okay? That's one thing about the West that we can count on is sanctions. They love them. They love sanctions.
Brazilian ambassador, the U.S. ambassador, at a meeting, at a table, discussing this. And finally, they decide, oh, we have too much invested in Haiti not to let these fraudulent elections move forward.
That was Dan Coughlin, who was writing about these in The Nation magazine. Why did the UN, the United States, our country, the EU, the European Union, insist on these elections being held when it's just like saying the Republicans are not allowed to be represented in the next election, or the Democrats are not allowed. That's the equivalent in Haiti, or actually more, because they have even more support.
I don't know. I mean, I have been, I could say, lucky enough to have a different brief, which is healthcare. And I can only speculate, again, looking back at this Cold War mentality that clearly governed. I say clearly, this is also a hypothesis on my part. I didn't interview the people who were the architects of some of these policies ever. In fact, I've not even met them. But I think in the 19th century, as I said, the big issue was slavery. In the later on in the 19th century, it was gunboat diplomacy and control of the customs houses, the economy. When we invaded Haiti in 1915 and stayed for 20 years, one American president said, really, it's really about, not so much about diminishing German influence in Haiti, which was one of the absurd claims from that era, but from really controlling the economy. And then came the Cold War, and some of the people, not to, again, to reach too far back, some of the people involved in setting Haiti policy, for example, between 2000 and 2004, 5, 6, the period that you covered, some of it sounds like Cold War thinking to me.
Keep in mind with the Cold War, I'm going to say this about the Cold War. The United States was essentially jostling, trying to get people to lean one way while they didn't really even care about those people. For example, like when it came to Cold War policy, right? The United States, it could give a rat's butt about Africa, right? But its whole purpose was like, okay, we don't care about Africa, but we care about Africa if it is aligning itself with the Soviet Union, which it did for the most part. Which is why, it tried its darndest to try to keep that from happening. And be honest with you. That's why that's one of the reasons why it supported apartheid, because apartheid wasn't aligned to the Soviet Union, you know. So this is why it supported it. It was that's why you had these Cold War policies.
These people keep on electing these left-wing nuts, and we won't have it. And whereas when I'm living and working there, what I hear is people not as left-wing or right-wing, or it's really who's going to side with the poor majority. And again, I think
and that's another point. Okay. And this is why I hate when people say to me, oh, you're a communist. Oh, you're a Marxist Leninist. No, I'm non-aligned. It's about what's going to be better for Africa. And if Russia is better for Africa, or alliance with Russia is better for Africa, so be it. If partnerships with China is better for Africa, so be it. If partnerships with North Korea are better with Africa, so be it. But it's not working with the United States right now. Okay? So this is what we have to keep in mind.
it's their business to choose the leadership that
And
they
I should
want.
have asked, what effect does this have when you disempower the people? And you can talk as a doctor and as a person who's lived and worked in Haiti for years.
Well, I can just tell you that we've gotten a lot done as an organization, I think, with our Haitian sister organization. We work with thousands. We've gotten a lot done. But the key to unlocking real dramatic improvements in public health and public education, at the very least. I mean, what I'm leaving aside, of course, is agriculture, tourism, private sector development, just because I don't know as much about those. But I'm convinced that the only way to really see public health and public education blossom in Haiti is allowing full participation of the majority. So to me, those are, again, causally related.
We're going to break and then come back. Dr. Paul Farmer has written a new book. It's called Haiti After the Earthquake. He is co-founder of Partners in Health, which works in Haiti and many other countries. He's in fact just returned from Rwanda. We'll be back with him in a minute.
All right. So I want to touch on two things. First, I want to take an excerpt from a Nipsey Hussle interview that he did on Eritrean TV, and then correlate it with I want to correlate it with Libya, what Libya was before, well, with Gaddafi.
Our people, and basically how it has perhaps committed to the long term. Rick Ross, Meek Mill, producers like DJ Mustard, 1500, a ton of people. So just been an uphill battle to get our name established in hip hop. And the biggest release we've had has been the one we put out in February. It was the #4 album in the country when it dropped. Like I said, it was called Victory Lap. And the core of our brand is called the Marathon. And so the idea behind that is just being committed to the long term process. Just a metaphor for life, to be committed to finishing what you start and looking at it as a long distance test of endurance, like a marathon. So yeah, if I was to sum it up, I would say that.
All right, Nipsey, I just want to know how rap has transformed your life and basically how it has perhaps even helped in your up
And I've been active in the hip hop space.
to share with us about his experiences and his achievements.
Coming out victorious and then being self sufficient. I mean, that the first thing I just say is
Origin, your life, and basically how it has perhaps even helped in your upbringing, and especially the fact that you are of Eritrean origin.
you know, the, whenever somebody asks me that, the first thing I just say is I feel a sense of pride, knowing the history of the struggle and just the circumstances that our people overcame, from being outnumbered, being against, superpowers.
So I want to actually highlight something about that, which lets me know that Africa can be rogue maroon. Um Now, and this is the only knock I have on Cuba. This is the only thing I have. The only knock I have on Cuba is the fact that they supported which one call it Ethiopia in this fight. That's the only thing I knock, because at first they were supporting Eritrea, they were supporting the ELF before they decided to support Cuba. I mean, before they decided to support um uh Ethiopia, you know. Let me go ahead and pull that up real quick. I'm pulling up some information. Just give me a minute. Give me a minute. I'm looking for something. Just give me a second. Sorry it's taking so long. I have to find something. Because I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this ELF situation and the fact that he said, yes, there were superpowers that they were against in this situation. They were indeed against superpowers in this thing, but people don't know the extent of the superpowers that they were against in this matter. You know, but anyhow, so in the Eritrean War of Independence, right? Eritrea, and by the way, it's Independence Month. By the way, Eritrea. Um, Let me find and see where it is. I want to see who all the participants were in this war. Hold on. Hold on. Cuz there was a lot of um I need to find all of the participants. Okay, good, good. Okay, here we go. So, when you look at the Eritrean War of Independence, they were indeed dealing with superpowers at the time. Eritrea, they were supported by countries that were just gaining their gaining their footing. You had Libya supporting it, Gaddafi's Libya. You had Sudan, Somalia, Syria, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia supporting the side of the Eritreans. However, on the Ethiopian side of things, you had the Soviet Union, you had Cuba, you had unfortunately South Yemen, and you also had Israel, and you had North Korea. So, yeah, they were up against some very, very tough forces, man. For real, for real. But let's continue.
and coming out victorious, and then being self-sufficient after the fact, and being independent in a country that believes in self-sufficiency and building from scratch. And similar to what I stand for in music is, taking the stairs and doing it the long way.
And that's what we need to do. We need to stop it with these loans, man. In Africa, we need to stop with this Western way of controlling us, which is through debt. This is what needs to stop. Now let's look at the fact that let's see what Libya once was when Gaddafi was in power.
Well, more speculation has been raised on the reasons for NATO's intervention in Libya. And as RT's Laura Emmett reports, the organisation may have been trying to prevent Gaddafi from burying the American buck.
According to some, it's about protecting civilians.
We must not tolerate this regime using military force against its own people.
Which it didn't. That was a lie.
Others say it's about oil.
The only reason they're interested with Libya is about the oil. You think we'd be in Iraq if the major export there was broccoli?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
But some are convinced intervention in Libya is all about currency, specifically Gaddafi's plan to introduce the gold dinar, a single African currency made from gold, a true sharing of the wealth.
It's one of these things that you have to plan almost in secret, because as soon as you say you're going to change over from the dollar to something else, you're going to be targeted.
So even if you're planning on your escape from the West, you may have to do it in secret, because even me, I'm getting scrutinized for planning my escape, planning my exit. You know what I mean? But it has to be planned anyway.
Two conferences on this, one in 96 and another one in the year 2000, called the World Mataba Conference, organized by Gaddafi. And everybody was interested, and I think most countries in Africa were keen.
Gaddafi didn't give up. In the months leading up to the military intervention, he called on African and Muslim nations to join together to create this new currency that would rival the dollar and euro. They would sell oil and other resources around the world only for gold dinars. It's an idea that would shift the economic balance of the world. Countries' wealth would depend on how much gold they have, not how many dollars they trade.
And to be honest with you, the West doesn't really have gold like that. And Europe doesn't really have gold like that. So this is why he was targeted.
And Libya has 144 tons of gold. The UK has double that, but 10 times the population.
I do have one question. During the crisis or any time that you're aware of, has the Federal Reserve or Treasury participated in any gold swaps arrangements?
The Federal Reserve does not own any gold at all. We have not owned gold since 1934. The Federal Reserve does not own any gold at all. We have not owned gold since 1934. The Federal Reserve does not own any gold at all.
If Gaddafi had an intent to try to reprice his oil or whatever else the country was selling in the global markets and accept something else as a currency, or maybe launch a gold dinar currency, any move such as that would certainly not be welcomed by the power elite today who are responsible for controlling the world's central banks. So yes, that would certainly be something that would cause his immediate dismissal and the need for other reasons to be brought forth for removing him from power.
It's happened before. In 2000, Saddam Hussein announced Iraqi oil would be traded in euros, not dollars. Sanctions and an invasion followed. Some say because the Americans were desperate to prevent OPEC from transferring oil trading in all its member countries to the euro.
The UK's gold is kept here in a secure vault somewhere in the depths of the Bank of England. As in most developed countries, there's not enough to go around. But that's not the case in places like Libya and many of the Gulf states. A gold dinar would have given oil-rich African and Middle Eastern countries the power to turn around to their energy-hungry customers and say, sorry, the price has gone up and we want gold. Some say the US and its NATO allies literally couldn't afford to let that happen.
And they can't afford to let it happen. That's why when they say that, oh, you know, there's nothing to worry about BRICS and things like that, it's just like damage control. That's all it is. It's just damage control, because they know that they literally can't afford to let happen what's going to happen. Okay? And I believe that it is going to happen. I'm a belief that it is going to happen. All right? I believe. But let's continue.
Laura Emmett, RT, London.
President Obama unequivocally putting Muammar Gaddafi on hold in a phone call to German Chancellor Angela Merkel. The president said Gaddafi was using mass violence as his only means of staying in power. That Gaddafi...
That was cap, by the way. That's complete and utter cap.
...had lost legitimacy, and for the first time, that Gaddafi should leave now. And late last night, the White House rolled out new sanctions against Libya, blocking bank accounts and freezing the assets of Gaddafi, his regime, and his children. The president had held back on calling for Gaddafi to step down until U.S. citizens were safely out of the country. Today, the president intensified the pressure. Russ.
Joel Brown at the White House. Well, right now, diplomats the world over are scratching their heads.
And I want to say this is the best weapon that they have. Is propaganda, the propaganda machine. If they did not have this weapon, bro, and if people didn't believe the propaganda, it would be a whole different ball game. I'm telling you.
On how to manage the situation in Libya, and on top of sanctions, Colonel Gaddafi now faces the possibility of a no-fly zone over his country. British Prime Minister David Cameron said he would work with his allies on preparations for such a plan, and would not rule out the use of military assets. At the same time, the United States is also repositioning its naval and air forces around Libya. The BBC's diplomatic correspondent James Robbins is following that part of the story.
These extraordinary pictures, apparently from the town of Misrata, suggest the scale of violence in parts of Libya as ground is fought over. And these images are thought to come from the same town, as Colonel Gaddafi's regime is squeezed both by the scale of rebellion and increasing global pressure on him to give up now. First, the diplomatic pressure.
How are you?
In Geneva, foreign ministers focused on newly announced European Union sanctions. They're important because 85% of Libya's energy exports are to Europe. Hillary Clinton.
You see how they bite the hand that feeds you? They really literally bite the hand that feeds them.
And said no military action was pending, but at Westminster the Prime Minister made clear the option of enforcing a no-fly zone over Libya is being worked on.
We do not in any way rule out the use of military assets. We must not tolerate this regime using military force against its own people. And in that context, I've asked the Ministry of Defence and the Chief of Defence Staff to work with our allies on plans for a military no-fly zone.
Imagine what the world would be like with him in power. The idea is to try to help change the Middle East. Now, look, part of the reason we went into Iraq.
And you changed it for the worse. That's exactly what you did. You changed it for the worse.
The main reason we went into Iraq at the time was we thought he had weapons of mass destruction. It turns out he didn't, but he had the capacity to make weapons of mass destruction. But I also talked about the human suffering in Iraq. And I also talked the need to advance a freedom agenda. And so my answer to your question is that imagine a world in which Saddam Hussein was there, stirring up even more trouble in a part of the world that had so much resentment, so much hatred, that people came and killed 3,000 of our citizens. You know,
there was no Iraqis on that plane. If it was, like, hypothetically speaking, we know better though. I'm gonna be honest, we know better. We know better. There was no single Iraqi on that plane when it happened.
I've heard this theory about, everything was just fine until we arrived, and then, kind of the stir up the hornet's nest theory. It just doesn't hold water as far as I'm concerned. The terrorists attacked us and killed 3,000 of our citizens before we started the freedom agenda in the Middle East. What did Iraq have to do with what?
The attack on the World Trade Center.
Nothing, except for it's part of, and nobody's ever suggested in this administration that Saddam Hussein ordered the attack.
We must not tolerate this regime using military force against its own people. And in that context, I've asked the Ministry of Defence and the Chief of Defence Staff to work with our allies on plans for a military no-fly zone.
But reviving an Iraq-style no-fly zone and imposing it over Libya would take time. Huge questions have to be answered first. Under whose authority would it be imposed? The UN has so far ruled out backing military action in this crisis. NATO is only in the very early stages of considering it. But financial pressure on the Gaddafi regime will build, slowly but steadily. It's now estimated that 80% of Libya's oil fields are in rebel hands. Over time, Colonel Gaddafi will run out of cash.
It's fundamentally important. There really is nothing else in the economy apart from oil, which is why I think that the international oil companies will be invited back by the next regime when it takes over.
The greatest pressure on Colonel Gaddafi is internal, from his own people. He's lost large parts of his country to the rebellion, with the east of the country fully in opposition hands. Libya's second city, Benghazi, was the first to fall. There's been fierce fighting at Misrata, particularly to control the airbase. There are towns outside Tripoli which remain in the hands of Gaddafi loyalists, including Sirte, Colonel Gaddafi's birthplace. But the focus is still on the capital itself. Tripoli is home to around 1.7 million people out of a total population of 6.4 million. And it's still the command center for up to an estimated 10,000 armed forces thought to be loyal to Gaddafi.
Libya's Colonel Muammar Gaddafi has warned that his people will fight back if world powers try to enforce a no-fly zone over the country's skies. Gaddafi told Turkey's TRT channel that the West only wanted to take action so it could seize control of Libyan oil. He also claimed that if he stepped down, it would leave a power vacuum to be filled by Al-Qaeda. We are the ones preventing Al-Qaeda from taking control, he said. They would drag the whole region into chaos.
Shout outs to whoever made this video, bro. Like, I may need to look into some more stuff that they made.
protest say that
They would drag the whole region into chaos.
4 million, and it's still a command centre for up to an estimated 10,000 armed forces thought to be loyal to Gaddafi.
Libya's Colonel Muammar Gaddafi has warned that his people will fight back if world powers try to enforce a no-fly zone over the country's skies. Gaddafi told Turkey's TRT channel that the West only wanted to take action so it could seize control of Libyan oil. He also claimed that if he stepped down, it would leave a power vacuum to be filled by Al-Qaeda. We are the ones preventing Al-Qaeda from taking control, he said. They would drag the whole region into chaos.
And the crazy thing about me too, I'm looked at as a fool when I talk about these certain things. When I'm talking about these things, when I do it on, for example, when I do it on, I do it on. I want to say I do it in on TikTok. When I post certain videos, they're like, "Oh man, what is this guy talking about? This guy doesn't know what he's talking about." They think I'm like foolish for posting this, and this is actually the truth of the matter. But let's continue on to something else.
It was Colonel Gaddafi's first interview for Western journalists since this crisis started. He agreed to see the BBC, ABC News from the United States, and the Sunday Times. He was fairly relaxed throughout the interview, which was held in a restaurant overlooking Tripoli port. He said the UN sanctions resolution against Libya was illegitimate. And then he was asked if he'd ever leave the country. As if anyone would leave their homeland, he said.
In recent years, you've had a rapprochement with Western countries. You've had important Western leaders like Tony Blair coming here. But now there are Western leaders who are queuing up to say that you should go. Do you feel a sense of betrayal about that?
Of course it's betrayal, he said. They have no moral. Mr. Gaddafi said,
They don't have morals, okay? The Western world does not have morals when they do things like this. I'm telling you.
didn't understand the Libyan system.
No, I understand the system that you have here, but internationally, you're regarded as understand the system
They don't understand the system, by the way. They don't understand.
here. No, don't say I understand. You don't understand, and the world don't understand the system here, the biblical system here, the authority of the people. You don't understand it.
But how do the people show their authority then? Because some who've gone out onto the streets to protest say that your people have shot at them.
No demonstration at all in the streets. أنت شفت مظاهرات؟
Did you see demonstrations?
Yes, I have, yes.
Where?
I saw some today. I
Where?
saw some in Zawiya. Yesterday I saw demonstrations.
Supporting us.
No, they're not supporting
They
us.
are not against us.
Some were against you and some were for
No, no one against us. Against me for what? Because I am not president. They love me, all my people with me. They love me all. They will die to protect me, my people.
If you say they do love you, then why are they capturing Benghazi and they say they're against you there? Why are they in?
It is a guide. It is a guide. It is guide, not my people. It is guide.
Al-Qaeda.
Guide. Yeah. They came from outside.
So they.
And he's right about that. He's right about that. Most of them were Western finance gangsters from the outside. I'm telling you. Most of them were Western finance gangsters. Okay. They did not come from I want to say from their country, or if they did come from their country, they were prisoners, okay? For obvious reason. He put a check on that.
They're the people pulling down the posters and putting up the flag of the king? It's Al-Qaeda, he said. They went into military bases and seized arms, and they're terrorizing the people. The people who had the weapons were youngsters. They're starting to lay down their weapons now as the drugs Al-Qaeda gave them wear off.
Even bin Laden's displays of strength for the Western media were faked. The fighters in this video had been hired for the day and told to bring their own weapons. For beyond his own small group, bin Laden had no formal organization until the Americans invented one for him. The picture Al-Fadl drew for the Americans of bin Laden was of an all-powerful figure at the head of a large terrorist network that had an organized hierarchy of control. He also said that bin Laden had given this network a name, Al-Qaeda. It was a dramatic and powerful picture of bin Laden, but it bore little relationship to the truth. The reality was that bin Laden and Ayman Zawahiri had become the focus of a loose association of disillusioned Islamist militants who were attracted by the new strategy. There is also no evidence that bin Laden used the term Al-Qaeda to refer to the name of a group until after September the 11th, when he realized that this was the term the Americans had given him.
Anti-Gaddafi rebels freed a prison in Tripoli. Today, CNN has learned that among those liberated inmates are hundreds of men who are believed to be supporters of Al-Qaeda. They're now on the loose. The man who uncovered this story is CNN terrorism analyst Paul Cruikshank. He has been to that prison in the past, joins us live from London. Paul, give us details on just who is now free in Libya.
Well, what we're hearing, Drew, is that up to 600 prisoners from this prison are believed to be pro-Al-Qaeda militants, people who were imprisoned there by Gaddafi, who've been there for several years, people who were imprisoned at the height.
So keep in mind, this was needed. This was Western orchestrated. I just want to let you know, this was a Western orchestrated situation, and they've done this in the past. I just learned, right? I just learned that that even in that Algerian civil war, I know this is hard to believe, but even the Islamists, the Islam extremists, were financed by Western powers. Okay, let's continue.
Of the Iraqi insurgency. Many of these individuals, we understand, actually tried to go to Iraq. Some of them came back from Iraq after fighting against American troops there. So there are rather large concerns at the moment about who these individuals are and what they may do in the future.
US President Barack Obama called on Muammar Gaddafi to stop the bloodshed and fighting in Libya, as rebels and forces loyal to him continue to clash on Monday.
Although it's clear that Gaddafi's rule is over, he still has the opportunity to reduce further bloodshed by explicitly relinquishing power to the people of Libya and calling for those forces that continue to fight to lay down their arms for the sake of Libya.
While rebels searched Tripoli for Gaddafi, some forces loyal to the autocratic leader fiercely continued the fight. Obama said the United States would be prepared to offer Libya support and provide humanitarian aid to the wounded.
I've directed my team to be in close contact with NATO as well as the United Nations to determine other steps that we can take. To deal with the humanitarian impact, we're working to ensure that critical supplies reach those in need, particularly those who've been wounded.
The US president said his country will continue to be involved in the multinational effort and supports NATO's mission in the ouster of Gaddafi.
We're working to ensure that critical supplies reach those in need.
Now, how could all these people get such a weapon in such good...
Keyword NATO, okay? These weren't rebels who were looking for like a legitimate revolution. These were NATO gangsters, okay?
condition? The rifle is not and has never been adopted by the Libyan army. Usually Libyan soldiers run around with old Kalashnikovs, like this one. This means that the rebels could not get all of those FN, FAL rifles from military storage points. And they certainly couldn't buy them in a store. So the question is, where did they get them from? And even more importantly, how could they get the enormous amounts of ammo needed for the rifles when Gaddafi didn't have them?
Libya's cash-starved rebels got a much-needed boost. Nations here signing off on promises of more than $1 billion of aid. But it's not just money the rebels want from the...
You see how messed up these Arabs are? They'll turn on their own brother. You know, they'll turn on their own brother even. So that's probably some guy from Qatar or UAE financing these NATO gangsters.
The international community.
We are asking countries to recognize the Transitional National Council as the legitimate and sole representative of the Libyan people.
As you can see, these are U.S. machine guns chambered for NATO rounds. And again, they're absolutely brand new, right out of the box. Normally, machine guns don't come with their own instructors to teach you how to use them.
Libya's cash-starved rebels got a much-needed boost. Nations here signing off on promises of more than $1 billion of aid.
But then again, machine guns alone don't win a revolution. You need...
I want to also say something that now, I'm pretty sure Gaddafi, if he was still there, he would have joined BRICS in a heartbeat. But now those days are past. Libya cannot join BRICS. It's very much a failed state right now. So it cannot join BRICS.
Something with some real firepower. And well, here's something. This is an MP-80S man-portable air defense system. Each one of these costs big money on the black market and requires a qualified professional to maintain them. And so that's why we can see an instructor here. The guy teaching the Libyans to manage this high-tech device sure doesn't look like one of them, does he?
Sure doesn't.
And here we can see a Joker running around with a U.S. Army pistol and a NATO Kevlar combat helmet. Now, how could he get all this? From Gaddafi's military storage? Come on. Okay, this crate is American and brand new. I think you could realize that by now.
Well, we can see a lot of brand new NATO weapons, foreign instructors, American ammo, new uniforms and equipment, and a suspiciously large amount of non-Libyan mugs.
Do you know what this looks like? You're absolutely right. It definitely looks like a well-organized coup from abroad. The foreign managers have brought the people, provided the brand new weapons,
instructors, and equipment, all to the young people in Libya. Naive young people who work for free drugs, dope, and just the rush of being a revolutionary.
Nobody even knows who the rebels represent. And there's good evidence that the Al-Qaeda is there. So we may be delivering Al-Qaeda another prize.
And that they did, because when you look at it, what happened once Gaddafi was taken out of power? Those weapons from Libya spread down into West Africa, spread down into Mali, spread down in Niger, spread down into Nigeria. That's why Boko Haram got the power it had. A lot of it had to do with the weapons that trickled down from Libya. So not only did they destabilize North Africa, they destabilized West Africa even more.
Will be in Libya. They weren't there before. And also, the Al-Qaeda is in Iraq now. So these unintended consequences of our foreign policy are so overwhelming. Logic tells us that we shouldn't be dealing with our foreign policy in this manner. We should be dealing for national security in defense of our country and not pretending that we can pick the dictators around the world. It's been very unsuccessful, and American people are waking up to this. Nobody even knows who the rebels represent. And there's good evidence that the Al-Qaeda is there. So we may be delivering Al-Qaeda another prize. They'll be in Libya. They weren't there before.
Promises of the great society have been shot down on the battlefield of Vietnam, making the poor, white and Negro, bear the heaviest burdens both at the front and at home. Other civil rights leaders, for various reasons, refuse or can't take a stand or have to go along with the administration. That's their business. But I must say tonight that I know that justice is indivisible. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life, longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up the mountain. I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight.
So I want to say something right now. I support the so I'm even thinking about getting this flag because it's just a green flag and it's the real Libyan flag. But not that black, red, and green flag. That's the fake Libyan flag. But I support the Libyan Arab Socialist Jamhuriya, the one that Gaddafi established, okay? Because he was rogue, he was maroon in essence. And it paid off until he lightened up. That's when it didn't pay off. But let's continue.
And we as a people will get to the promised land.
Now you have to ask yourself, if his people hated him, why didn't they just delete him right there? Why didn't they just delete him right there if he was such a hated tyrant dictator guy? They could have easily crowded his car up and deleted him, but they didn't.
So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
I want to say to Al Jazeera, wake up, because you are in dreaming. No one can kill Muammar Gaddafi.
So you see this woman right here, okay, this elderly woman, educated because she speaks English, which goes to show it was a literate society that they were in. This woman right here is saying, wake up. Nobody can kill Gaddafi. Let's go again.
I want to say to Al Jazeera, wake up, because you are in dreaming. No one can kill Muammar Gaddafi. All Libyan with Muammar Gaddafi.
Listen, she said all of Libya was with Muammar Gaddafi. Now let's listen to this.
Invited foreign media to come to Tripoli and to Libya and to see and to watch and to send their reports to their channels. We noticed that the administration or management of their channels selected what they want from these reports and eliminate or delete what does not serve their purposes.
Which is why people here are angry. Mohammed's taken a few days off from his work as an engineer to join the throngs of Gaddafi supporters in downtown Green Square.
They're hiding this. They're hiding this. What's going on now? Okay, all the people are here. Just, of course, yes, just to be supportive for our leader Muammar Gaddafi.
You see this? You see this? They love that man. They love that man. Yes, there were probably like a few dissatisfied people. Okay, but for the most part, it looks like they loved him.
Okay, and they want to hide this.
But, say analysts, it's not just what's being hidden, it's also what's actually being said.
What we're getting is a pro-U.S., pro-Pentagon, one-sided picture of a situation which fills the media with the idea that there's freedom fighters involved in Libya and that there's a government regime that's been an atrocious terrorist government for the last, since 1970, roughly. This is nonsense.
Here, the Jazeera, you say I'm not in Tripoli, maybe I'm in Afghanistan, maybe I'm in Iraq.
The war is clearly not in Tripoli. And just as clearly, Western media has been a little too quick to write off Gaddafi. Holislia, RT, Tripoli.
The coalition said destroying Gaddafi was not their goal. Then why bomb his palaces? Now some officials have claimed that eliminating him was in fact their goal. Who gave them that right? Did he have a fair trial? Returning to the no-fly zone, the bombings are destroying the country's entire infrastructure.
And that's what the West does. Like, you know, like, the thing is, if you don't agree with them, then they, I hate to say it, but they just decided upon themselves to say, well, you know what? The hell with you. I don't even give a crap if you, I don't even give a crap if you basically, if you rot. You know, it's sad to say it, but that's what they do. It's really sad. Okay? When you talk about a failed state, this is a failed state, okay? This is a failed state. But let's continue.
When the so-called civilized world uses all its military power against a small country, destroying what's been created by generations, I don't know if that's good.
تجي قوة أجنبية تحتل دولة عربية وتشنق رئيسها وإحنا نتفرج عليهم صح. وليش ما نحققوا في شنق صدام حسين؟ كيف يصير حرب يشنق؟ لا تتكلموا عن سياسة صدام حسين والخلاف معاه السياسي، ممكن كنا مختلفين سياسيين، مختلفين حتى مع بعضنا نحن الآن. قيادة عربية بالكامل تقتل تشنق في المشانق ونحن نتفرج، لماذا؟ وممكن الدور جاي عليكم كلكم. نعم. ليش امريكا قاتلت مع صدام حسين ضد الخميني؟ كان صديقها، تشيني كان صديق لصدام حسين. رامز سلي كان وزير الدفاع.
And they think he's crazy. These Arab leaders think he's crazy, but he's not. Okay. He just looked like he was crazy by them, but he wasn't crazy.
امريكا لما كان يدمر في العراق صديق حميم لصدام حسين واخيرا باعوه وشنقوه. حتى انتم اصدقاء امريكا، نحن اصدقاء امريكا، بلاش نقول انتم، نحن اصدقاء امريكا كلنا قد توافق امريكا على شنقنا في يوم ما. احنا شو للاسف الشديد احنا اعداء لبعضنا، احنا كلنا نكره بعضنا ونتخاصم مع بعضنا ونكيد لبعضنا ونشمت لبعضنا ونتآمر على بعضنا. احنا مخابراتنا نتآمر على بعضنا، ما تحمي فينا من العدو. نحن عدو لبعض، عدو العربي صديق للعربي الآخر. هل المقاعد الدائمة هل نحن متساويين فيها؟ أبدا، غير متساويين. من برا الخطابة فقط، زي ما تخطب في حديقة.
Gaddafi upstaged Obama's 40-minute speech by speaking for an hour and a half, delivering a scathing attack from the podium against the world body. It was as if fireworks went off. Seriously, what he said was that the UN, the world body, has failed to intervene or prevent 65 wars since the inception of the UN in 1945. Now, as Gaddafi spoke from the podium, he was holding a copy of the UN Charter in his hands, waving it ferociously, and he was saying that the UN right now is not a democratic institution because it's really the Security Council that holds the power, particularly 5 veto-wielding members of the Security Council that hold the power. He said that the power.
Yes, he's right. Okay.
Needs to be held by the General Assembly. He said that's what would make this international body more democratic. And what he said that actually shocked everybody that was watching his speech was that the Security Council should instead be called the Terrorism Council.
And we should not accept any resolution taken by the Security Council according to this composition right now. We were under trusteeship, we were colonized, we are independent, and now we are here to decide the future of the world in a democratic way that will maintain world and peace security. All people, small and big, are equals. This is terrorism, like the terrorism of the Qaeda. This is terrorism. This is in full contradictions and full intervention of the United Nations charters, and we signed that. And unless we do things in the charter of the United Nations according which we agreed, otherwise we don't speak diplomatically. We are not afraid. We are not coveting, and we were not being nice to anybody. Now we are talking about the future of the. There is no hypocrisy, no diplomacy, because it is a decisive and important vital matter. Of understanding and hypocrisy created to 65 wars after the establishment of the United Nations.
For 41 years in charge and in control, apart from a few royals, Muammar Gaddafi held power longer than anyone else, anywhere else. Even in the last few days, his country facing attacks from an international alliance, he was full of bravado, full of contempt for those who sought to end what he saw as a glorious rule to be hailed forever.
If Tripoli was to burn, like Baghdad did, why would you allow for this to happen? How can you let Tripoli, which was beautiful and safe,
which it was, I'm telling you, which it was.
how can you allow for it to be a place of destruction and be set alight? This should not happen. This must not happen.
And joining us to talk more about the CIA's possible role in Libya from Washington, former CIA counterterrorism analyst Michael Scheuer. Michael, thanks for being with us.
I want to also say something. The CIA was involved in a lot of things, okay? The CIA was involved in even the Chechnya separatists in Russia at the time, okay? They had their hands written all over that because we know how much the West dislikes Russia. So, of course, they're going to have their hands on the opposition, even if the opposition is Islamic extremists.
This morning.
You're welcome.
So there are reports out, again, that the CIA is on the ground in Libya, contacting and vetting the rebels. Is this setting the stage to arm them?
I don't think there's any other possible reason for it. And the president clearly has sent the agency in to find out who he is supporting and to see what kind of material, human material, we would have to work with if the president decided to arm and train these people over the longer term.
Yeah, and you're concerned about this prospect. You think it could become another Taliban situation for the U.S. What, in your mind, is the worst case scenario here?
Well, Libya has been very strong in sending young men or having its young men go overseas to fight in Islamic insurgencies in the Balkans, in Chechnya, Afghanistan, especially Iraq, when the height of the fighting was there. Those that don't get killed, of course, go home. And I think the core of the resistance, whatever little...
Keep in mind that, like, a lot of these Islamic insurgents, what they would do is that they would hop from one conflict to the other conflict. There was even a situation where there was this guy from Sudan. He went to Chechnya to fight. There was another situation with the guy from Saudi Arabia. For whatever reason, he wanted to involve himself. He went to Chechnya to fight. And the same thing happened in Libya.
Military ability they have is probably made up by people elsewhere we would call mujahideen. And so it's a dicey proposition to be getting involved with this. I'm not sure that the opposition, if it takes power, is going to be much better than was Gaddafi.
But that's why you need to have the CIA, I presume, in there vetting, as we said, who are these people, who are the elements that are funding them or supporting them, who are the politically the most palatable and the least palatable among them. The White House saying that no decision has been made. I have a question for you as a CIA veteran, I guess. I mean, the fact that we even know about this, is that unusual? I mean, should we just assume that the CIA in this sort of a situation would, of course, be in there on the ground?
What's the alternative if we don't arm the rebels and they're clearly outmanned and outgunned by Gaddafi's forces? What's the better solution here?
The better solution was, as Mr. Paul said, never go at all. This was none of our business. But I think what we're seeing is the string is playing out. We threatened Gaddafi and that didn't work. There's an arms embargo and an economic embargo. That didn't work. There was a UN resolution and that didn't work. Aerial bombing has continued and has impact, but it hasn't defeated him. Now we're at the stage where we're going to apparently try to train and arm the resistance. That takes a long time. I don't know if we have that time against Gaddafi. What we're seeing is the president putting himself into a corner where his only option is ground troops.
But that's something that is that's something that no one says that they want to do in this administration. I mean, they simply don't want to do that. They want to.
Well, they don't. Well, the choice may come down to admitting that it was a mistake and being defeated in the sense that Gaddafi survives, or putting ground troops in. Nations are a lot like people. They don't like admitting to mistakes. And maybe they don't want to put them in, but when it comes down to looking defeat in the face,
America will never admit to its mistakes. It will never admit to its mistakes in Iraq. It will never admit to its mistakes in Afghanistan. They'll always say, "Oh, we were trying to install democracy there." That's usually how it goes.
In the Muslim world, this is Americans killing Muslims again, and it looks like it's for oil.
He said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
You must remember, dear people of America, that whenever government wants you to think and act in a certain way that would bring justification to an action that they are already planning to make, they must make the person that they hate a boogeyman.
يعني يجاوبونا على السؤال اللي حاير، لماذا العراق؟ شو سبب؟ بن لادن عراقي، ما عراقي، اللي يضربوا نيويورك عراقيين، ما هم عراقيين. اللي يضربوا البنتاغون عراقيين، ما هم عراقيين. في أسلحة دمار شامل عند العراق ما عنده.
Dom has perfected the game of cheat and retreat and is very skilled in the art of denial and deception.
This is a regime that has already used poison gas to murder thousands of its own citizens on Saddam Hussein's orders.
This is a man who has attacked his neighbors twice, who represses.
It's because his neighbors were trying to steal oil and you were trying to help in the process of that oil being stolen.
His own people.
He used chemical weapons both against the Kurds and against the Iranians during the 1980s.
Who is continuing to develop weapons of mass destruction.
He's launched ballistic missiles against 4 of his neighbors over the years.
Who's tried to assassinate a former American president.
This is a man of great evil.
وممكن الدور جاي عليكم كلكم. نعم. ليش امريكا قاتلت مع صدام حسين ضد الخميني؟ كان صديقها. تشيني كان صديق لصدام حسين. رامز سلي كان وزير دفاع الامريكا لما كان يدمروا في العراق، صديق حميم لصدام حسين. واخيرا باعوه وشنقوه. حتى انتم اصدقاء امريكا، نحن اصدقاء امريكا، بلاش نقول نحن اصدقاء امريكا كلنا.
Saddam Hussein is a homicidal dictator who is addicted to weapons of mass destruction. Intelligence sources indicate that Saddam Hussein has ordered,
and these were lies,
that scientists who cooperate with UN inspectors in disarming Iraq will be killed along with their families.
The charter states that we, in the preamble, I mean, that we are, that we shall not resort to the military force unless it is a common interest. 65 wars broke out after the establishment of the United Nations and after the establishment of the Security Councils, and after this establishment, 65, and the victims are millions more than the victims of the Second World War. Are these wars and the aggressions and the force that was used, the power in the 65 was in the interest of the common interest of all of us? No, it was in the interest of one country or 3 countries or 4 countries or 1 country.
What the CIA does is go into a country and move among the people that are dissatisfied to stimulate a revolt against a leader that they don't like because they want regime change.
So I want to say something about that. There always is going to be dissatisfied elements in society, even when it is amongst like the best society. Libya at one time was like the Switzerland of Africa with the living standard. Even in countries like Sweden, even in countries like Denmark, even in countries like that Norway, there is still dissatisfaction amongst those people.
It will become anti-Western again if the West's hand is seen to be meddling. And there are already indications of that. Look at the British having sent an SAS team and MI6 agents into Libya.
David Cameron has been accused by some people within the government of trying to orchestrate regime change across the Arab world. Is this something that you agree with?
Of course. With France? Of course. It's very obvious. It's very obvious.
Has Gaddafi used the oil money to build Libya? Yes. Did Gaddafi use oil money and discover water under the Sahara Desert and brought that water to the surface and brought water from Benghazi all the way to the border almost of Tunisia? Did he impose farming in the desert so that they could feed their own people? Yes. Are there billions of dollars that he's spending building homes, building apartments for his people? Yes. So something is under this. And so when America, England, France, 3 imperialist powers want to destabilize that country, is it that you're so concerned?
You are hearing rumors, false reports. Please take your camera tomorrow morning, even this night. Go to every city in Libya. Everything is calm. Everything is peaceful. The point is there is a big gap between reality and the media reports.
So is the unbalanced nature of the coverage. Rather than being impartial observers, some networks stop short of directing the protesters. But here, the Al Jazeera crew is warming up the crowd in time for their next live report.
Footage we see on American and British channels looks fake. They create an illusion of military action. Where are the aircraft? Where are the bomb raids? Where is the destruction and casualties we hear so much about? If all that is true, evidence should now be on the table of the Security Council.
On both sides, the army and police on one, the insurgents on the other, only 150 to 200 people were killed. But it's claimed there were thousands.
An attack on Muammar Gaddafi is an attack on Libya itself.
You see, they're still supporting him. Okay?
It is treason. There is no uprising in the East, only a criminal enterprise by a few hundred gangsters. They are mystified that the United Nations cannot see that.
There's a constant refrain in this crowd. The people are happy, but Al Jazeera knows nothing.
Well, the reports of Libya mobilizing its air force against its own people spread quickly around the world. But Russia's military chief says they've been monitoring from space, and the pictures tell a different story.
According to Al Jazeera and to BBC, on the 22nd of February, Libyan government has inflicted airstrikes on Benghazi, the biggest city in the country, and on Tripoli. And according to Russia's military, they have not registered any of those airstrikes. According to them, the pictures show that nothing of that sort has been going on the ground.
Now, the tough new sanctions and Gaddafi's increasing isolation are based on allegations that he has ordered airstrikes, bombing of civilian protesters.
Which was cap. NATO was actually bombing civilian protesters.
We have seen no evidence of that yet, and the Gaddafis strongly deny it.
Are there any conditions under which you would support foreign military intervention in Libya?
Facts, that's all. Only facts on the table of the UN Security Council saying that weapons were used against peaceful civilians in Libya.
You know, we told them, the British and the French, we did challenge them. We told them, send fact-finding mission to Libya.
The thing is, we don't have any facts. We have reports from the BBC, CNN, and other media featuring some machine gunner firing his machine gun in the air.
Exactly. Like, and that's why you have to go to these places, okay? That's why if Gaddafi was in power, you would have to go to that place when he was in power in order to see the truth of the matter. Not what you've been told, basically.
At the same time, we don't see any aircraft attacking. Instead, we see people applauding the gunner for looking so cool. If there were a real aircraft attack in progress, they wouldn't be applauding.
The U.S. has reportedly asked Saudi Arabia if it can supply weapons to the rebels in Benghazi. The Saudis have been told that opponents of Gaddafi need anti-tank rockets, mortars, and ground-to-air missiles to shoot down Gaddafi's fighter bombers.
We say we're concerned about things happening in Libya. Please note the following: the North African cell of Al-Qaeda is also concerned about what's happening in Libya. Do you think that's a coincidence?
Americans themselves have estimated that Libya, especially the eastern part of the country, which is where the rebels have reportedly gained control, is home to a large number of jihadists. They make up a fifth of world jihadists. It's enough to say that one of the rebel leaders in northeast Benghazi was once Osama bin Laden's personal driver. The question here is whether the U.S. is going to end up putting weapons in the hands of radicals and destabilizing the region even more.
Anti-Gaddafi rebels are growing.
They succeeded at that. They did I'll admit that. They did a damn good job at that.
More confident and are now focusing on capturing Tripoli.
With God's will, we will win. We're going out today for this tyrant and Zionist. With God's will, it will be his last day.
This man has been investing in African development. This man has been moving throughout Africa. This man has friends all over the world. He may not be your friend, but if you take him out and kill him like he's some rotten fella that wants to kill his own people, what did you do in Waco? What did you do? when your people rose up, did you talk them out of it? No, they had weapons, you bombed them. What did you do in Philadelphia with the Move movement? Did you talk them out of their home or did you bomb them?
Let me focus on initially the issue of Libya. I want to talk about the substance of Libya because there's been all kinds of noise about process and congressional consultation and so forth. Let's talk about concretely what's happened. I spoke to the American people about what we would do.
You also took an oath. Remember, you solemnly swore to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear that I will execute the office of President of the United States faithfully and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
You actually took it twice. Remember, you solemnly swore that to the best of your ability you would preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. We have done exactly what I said we would do.
Except, of course, the most important thing, your oath of office, where you solemnly swore to uphold the Constitution. And before the election, you told people that you would uphold it. You answered a question about this very thing, about presidential war powers.
So, a lot of this fuss is politics.
Fuss, it's our Constitution. We were warned of exactly this abuse of power by the father of the Constitution. Madison wrote how the U.S. Constitution was deliberately designed to prevent the president from doing what Obama has done. In no part of the Constitution is more wisdom to be found than in the clause that confides the question of war or peace to the legislature and not to the executive department. Our Constitution was clearly written to prevent Obama from doing what he explicitly promised us he wouldn't do if we trusted him with the responsibility to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution.
And this suddenly becomes the cause célèbre for some folks in Congress? Come on.
This guy should be impeached. There's no legitimacy to allow a president to continue after he's done such a thing with the most important issue, the issue of war.
And this suddenly becomes the cause célèbre for some folks in Congress? Come on.
He should be impeached. If there was any justice in this country, he swore an oath to the Constitution and he violated that oath.
Yep, of course.
Hear eerie echoes of the run-up to the war in Iraq in the way the president and the vice president talk about Iran. Well, George Bush and Dick Cheney must hear, loud and clear, from the American people and the Congress. You do not have our support and you do not have our authorization to launch another war.
You see the double standards, how this fool said you hear the double standards of this guy? Okay, when he first got into power, of course it was just it was just fluff that he was spitting. But he said the first thing he said, we got to get the troops out of Afghanistan. The second thing he said is we got to get the troops out of Iraq. What does he do? He elevates and adds more things into it. He decides to bomb Afghanistan even more. And then take it a step further, he bombs Libya, destabilizes that place, and then he goes on to Syria. The double standards and the double talk are just amazing to me.
But I want to ask you about something you've been involved with. You said that if the President of the United States had launched an attack on Iran without congressional approval, that would have been an impeachable offense. You want to review
Absolutely.
That comment you made? Well, how do you stand on that now?
Yes, I do. I want to stand by that comment I made. The reason I made the comment was as a warning. The reason I don't say those things lightly, Chris. You've known me for a long time. I was chairman of the Judiciary Committee for 17 years, or its ranking member. I teach separation of powers in constitutional law. This is something I know. So I got together and brought a group of constitutional scholars together to write a piece that I'm going to deliver to the whole United States Senate, pointing out the president has no constitutional authority to take this nation to war against a country of 70 million people unless we're attacked or unless there is proof that we are about to be attacked. And if he does, I would move to impeach him. The House obviously has to do that, but I would lead an effort to impeach him. The reason for my doing that, I don't say it lightly. I don't say it lightly.
Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. So, I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
ما فيه ديمقراطية هناك، بل هناك دكتاتورية لا تختلف أبدا عن دكتاتورية هتلر أو نابليون أو موسوليني أو جنكيز خان أو اسكندر إلى آخر الطغاة. انتخابات أمريكية طلع مواطن أسود أصله من كينيا.
Notice he called Barack Obama a Muslim, but you know the whole time Barack Obama was trying to cap as if he was a Christian. You know darn well that he was a Muslim.
أفريقي ومسلم وكان يدرس في مدرسة إسلامية في إندونيسيا اسمه أوباما، والناس كلهم صفقوا لهذه الشخصية في الوطن العربي وفي العالم الإسلامي وفي أفريقيا، واستبشروا بخير وصفقوا له وصلوا من أجله ودعوا له بالنجاح، وربما يكونوا قد دخلوا حتى في حملات التبرع الشرعية لتمكينه من الفوز في رئاسة أمريكا. لكن فوجئنا بأن أخانا وشقيقنا الأفريقي الكيني الأمريكي الجنسية يطلع بتصريحات صدمت كل المؤيديه في العالم العربي وفي افريقيا وفي العالم الاسلامي. نحن نتمنى وربما تكون هكذا ان هي مجرد زي ما يقولوا في مصر كوزيون انتخابي. هذه مناسبه انتخابيه، ان كذبه انتخابيه. مش تعرفوا مهزله الانتخابات ان الواحد يكذب على الناس لكي يعطوه اطلاقا، وبعد ياخذ تطبيق وينجح يقولون له انت وعدت بكذا بكذا، يقول لا هذه دعايه انتخابيه. شوفوا هذه الديمقراطيه. لا هذه دعايه انتخابيه، لكنها جد، لكنها مفروض نضحك عليكم ندخل اصواتكم. ان شاء الله هي تكون هكذا مجرد دعايه انتخابيه. لكن كونك هو يقول ان القدس ساعملها عاصمه الى الابد للاسرائيليين، هذا يدل على انه هو ان اخانا اوباما يدخل السياسه الدوليه وهو مطلع على ملف الصراع والشرق الاوسط.
So keep in mind, Libya was the highest living standard in Africa, and even, you know, I'm not gonna lie, even migrants were treated pretty darn well there, and also the black population was also treated pretty well there. I can't say that now. You know, Gaddafi he put that stuff in check when he was there, the racism and stuff like that. But now, I mean, Libya is mad racist. Now, homes are considered a human right in Libya, right? Let's be honest. Are homes a human right in Los Angeles right now? Are homes a human right in Philadelphia right now? Are homes a human right in the encampments in freaking Hollywood right now? That would be a no. Newly married couples receive $50,000 to buy a home. Okay. Most women in the West would say a man that makes $50,000 ain't ish. Okay, fine. We'll meet you halfway. Okay. And we'll give you additional $50,000. So the Libyan government also financed them to go abroad for healthcare or any doctor needs that they had. So what does that tell you, bro, about this whole situation? Okay? About Libya and the standard of living. What does it tell you? All loans are interest free. So in essence, all you're doing is paying back the principal on the loan. So as you see, it was funny business, even in the bombing. You see how also we see, let's go back a little bit. Let's go back. The Libyan central bank is state owned. And unlike all the banks in the West, keyword, that's what Africa needs to do. Kick out all these Western banks and own banks of the state. Okay? So the United States even tried to make Libya look like a terrorist state by paying witnesses or would-be witnesses $4 million to testify against them. Okay? Just give me a minute. Give me 1 second. I'm looking for something. Sorry for my silence. I'm looking for something. All right. Let me go ahead and get on with it. All right. Let me see. All right. Let's continue. So, as you see here, right? Libya was debt free. Okay. Libya was moving away from the dollar. So in a way, Libya was kind of like the blueprints of BRICS when you really think about it. Libya was lightweight, the blueprint of BRICS, right? And unlike all these other African leaders, Mr. Gaddafi did not sell himself out or sell his leadership or sell his people out.
Everything will be perfect tonight and forever. Light shine on, making our faces many colors. Everyone is moving like waves make an ocean on and on. Everybody's singing, yes, this is happiness happening. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Everything will be perfect tonight and forever. Light shine on, making our faces many colors. Everyone is moving like waves make an ocean on. Everybody's singing, yeah.
And that's the problem in the West. You can't even represent yourself, really. Like, truthfully speaking, you can't like really represent yourself. They want to group you all together with the order of the day. So if they want to push like, let's say, this if they want to push I want to say the alphabet soup brigade, they want to group you with that, unfortunately. As bad as it sounds. They group you with that. Well, let's continue.
This is happiness happening. 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 La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La la la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La la la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La la la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la.
Yeah, that's the thing. And they're doing these crime of humanities in Ukraine now. The West is. And that's one of the and I'm gonna tell you something. That's one of the reasons that prompted my exit from this place is the fact that my tax dollars is going to a legal war. That was there was a legal coup d'etat anyway. That's why I have to get out of this. Okay.
Everything will be perfect.
He said we're complicit in it, and one day it will be our turn. And guess what? I think that turn is coming. Okay. I know this was a long video. I know this was a long-winded video. Okay. Now I'm gonna end this live stream by reading something um that was brought to my attention that someone sent to me, and then I'm gonna end it right now. Okay. This live stream was given to me. It was sent to me. I I didn't know about it, but now but we're gonna get into it. Let's get into this, okay? Give me 1 second. Give me 1 minute. I keep on saying give me 1 minute. I want to read something, and this actually kind of came as a shock to me. I didn't know this was actually occurring. Um, but it did occur unknowingly to me, it did occur. But I mean, what at the end of the day, what should we expect less? That's the real story. Like, really, should we expect less than what they give to us? Like, honestly. But let me go ahead and read what I found. Just give me a second. Excuse me. Now, many people think that, for example, many people think that the reason why Nigeria is in the situation it is largely due to mismanagement of things that are going on in Nigeria, which I will admit that there is some truth to that. Okay, there is some truth. Um, there is some belief in that. Okay. Um, Now, however, they're not telling you everything, right? And I'm about to read it. The CIA in Nigeria, coups past, present, and future. The 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 U.S. in the U.S. Congress investigates the murder of foreign leaders by the CIA and calls for a presidential decree to end the practice. Meanwhile, the economy goes into a tailspin because of the rising oil prices and a near complete oil embargo against the West. Just when pressure just when pressure mounts for reform, the government's secret operations overseas, the government's single most important oil supplying nation, falls into nationalist hands. The president, the presidential orders prepared and signed, but not until 5 days after the coup, puts Nigeria firmly under friendly rule. Was it a coincidence or conspiracy? Suspicions still linger. A series of formerly secret cables between Lagos and Washington, with other documents from government and private sources, reveal ties between Obasanjo and at least two groups working closely with the CIA, and also make it appear likely that the recent plot to overthrow Nigerian military government originated in Washington. When Murtala Mohammed was killed on the 13th of February, 1976, suspicions were widespread that the CIA had a hand in assassination. This is much reflected in a secret report prepared by the U.S. Information Agency, the propaganda office that oversees VOS broadcasts and U.S. information services installation around the world. The U.S. 1976 country plan for Nigeria, declassified only 5 years ago, acknowledged that the political climate in Nigeria following Mohammed's assassination had been one of uncertainty and distrust and suspicion. It further advised charges of U.S. and CIA backing an attempted coup were prevailing um, were prevalent, and chancery of all USS posts physically attacked. The USIS document leaves no doubt about American intentions towards Africa's most popular nation. Indeed, the same confidential report called Nigeria the primary external source of crude oil for the United States and repeatedly stressed the need for increased American influence. Many of the State Department's Nigerian cables for the months prior to the assassination of Brigadier Murtala Mohammed are still classified, other which have been released to investigators. In recent years are unconclusive, but the record nonetheless illustrates paranoia that exists in the United States at the time about access to oil, about Nigeria's growing capacity to influence the rest of the continent. A 26 September 25 communique complains, for instance, that Nigeria has supplied several thousands of dollars to leaders of the then banned African National Congress in Lusaka. Another written um, in January 1976, classified as confidential, cited the hereditary heard with increasing frequency from Nigerian leaders about uncompromising supremacy of Nigeria's national interests, as well as opposing what Mohammed himself had reportedly described as blackmail, vicious propaganda from the West. Perhaps worst of all was the unpardonable sin committed by Mohammed when he declined an official visit by U.S. Secretary Henry A. Kissinger was proposed May of 1976. U.S. intelligence gathering operations likewise escalated at an alarming pace during Mohammed's rule in a 20th January 1906 cable from Lagos to Washington, for example. Donald Eastland warned, if Nigeria wants to use oil as a political weapon to promote its foreign policy, this would not necessarily involve further nationalization, but could mean FNG is considered ways it might assert greater control over which consuming countries get Nigerian oil. In yet another secret dispatch written less than 2 weeks before Mohammed was killed, hints that U.S. officials were prepared to sabotage Nigeria's booming economy. Nigeria wrote Ambassador Eastham 2nd February of 1976, desires to play leadership role and will require a modern army if its power within African context is to be credible. Further, it likely that given foreseeable internal policies realities, Nigeria will maintain a relatively large army for some time to come. The same telegram listed a series of modern weapons likely to be acquired by the Nigerian government, asserted a belief that a civilian government might exercise a more restraint, but ended on a more bitter note. One development would act as a constant constraint. Nigerian armed purchases, a sharp drop in price of petroleum. To appreciate fully Obasanjo's curious concerns to Western insiders, one must first look at the circumstances which Mohammed was murdered, at the political context of the time. The OPEC oil embargo presented the wealthy nations of the Northern Hemisphere with most serious crisis they faced in recent history. Unlike others, the action imposed upon Western leaders, their voluntary collective action by resource-rich states in the Southern Hemisphere. In fact, the oil boycott accomplished something that two world wars and a half-century-long East-West confrontation never even have touched. It altered the distribution between wealth north and south, the wealth between the north and south. Moreover, the embargo came at a time when the U.S. was still stinging from humiliation of its military defeat in Vietnam. Yeah, Americans like to tell you that they won in Vietnam. They didn't win. Okay, they didn't win that war. Just a heads up. A civil rights movement, massive in scope. Let me see. It is also worth noting that the OPEC action would have been even more devastating to the US and its Western allies if it had been complete. But as Nigeria's head of state, Yakubu Gowon, opted to permit shipments of the US throughout the boycott, it is not entirely surprising then that just 1 month after nationalist Murtala took office, an elaborate feasibility study presented to Congress, the dated let me see. Even as the U.S. Government was preparing for a possibility of full-fledged petroleum sanctions that could infringe um, on the nation's vital interests and planning its long-run population reduction scheme, yet another development destined to shake the Congress was taking shape. Congress, in response to growing distrust of the government among the American public, began holding hearings into abuses by CIA of particular interest. Was the matter of political assassination and plots to overthrow foreign heads of state. And there was abundant evidence of CIA involvement in such actions in Africa. The agency's role in the 1961 murder of Patrice Lumumba, for instance, was first revealed publicly by the former chief of CIA Angola's division, John Stockwell, in a landmark book titled In Search for Enemies, a CIA story. In that 1978 expose, Stockwell asserts that the Congolese leader had been eliminated to preserve a $500 million investment in Zairian mineral resources, which the West felt would end up in the wrong hands if Lumumba controlled the vast Central African nation. In this book, Stockwell also recalls a conversation with a fellow U.S. operative who told driving around town after curfew with Patrice Lumumba's body in the trunk of his car, trying to decide what to do with it. According to Stockwell and confirmed in testimony given before Congress, Richard Helms, CIA director from 1966 to 1973, had ordered the destruction of numerous records relating to the assassination of Lumumba. Stockwell also reveals the same book the CIA station in Ghana played a major role in the overthrow of Kwame Nkrumah. Former secret State Department records have also revealed the United States secretly worked closely with British colonial rulers in 1950s as a part of a plot aimed at breaking the back of the Mau Mau movement, in particular, gaining at the getting the independence leader Jomo Kenyatta out of circulation without due process of law. It was words of top secret October 1952 cable from Nairobi. To track careers in high-ranking U.S. policymakers, it is here that Obasanjo's ties to the inner circle of Washington and New York became apparent. At the time of Mohammed's assassination, the United States ambassador to Nigeria was Donald Isom, who enjoyed a cordial relationship with Henry Kissinger. After leaving his overseas post up through the early, Isom headed an outfit called the African American Institute, which is headquartered across the street from New York, United Nations in New York. The African American Institute is an establishment created in 1954 with the CIA money to promote an exchange between the ideas between the United States and people of Africa. It is essentially a liberal face of CIA inspired meddling in Africa's internal political institutions. Okay, let me see. It was not in the fall of 1975, Ford selected a new director of Central Intelligence who was sworn in the office on January 30th, 1976, exactly 2 weeks before the coup that brought Obasanjo to power. Over the objections of many, the same legislators who had labored to uncover the abuses by a secret agency, the CIA chief had a reputation of being the nation's most enthusiastic supporter of foreign population control measures. In the 1960s and 1970s, both as a member of the House of Representatives, the Nixon's envoy to the UN, and he later engineered the oil motivated massacres of hundreds of thousands of Iraqis. His name, George Bush. It was not 18 until the 18th of February 1976, 5 days after Mohammed was killed, and more than 2 weeks after the Bush took charge of the CIA, that President Ford signed the long-awaited Executive Order 11905 on the subject of United States foreign intelligence activities. The directive stated no employee of the United States government shall engage or conspire in engaging in political assassination. By then, of course, Obasanjo had been safely installed in the Brigadier's Mohammed's replacement. Although the assassination ban is still technically enforced, it does nothing to hinder the actions of foreign government which stop short of murder. US aided coups, for example. In fact, over the past several years, the government has been surprisingly open about advocating removal several leaders. Cuba's Fidel Castro, Saddam Hussein in Iraq, just to name two. Within weeks of embarking on humanitarian invasion in Somalia, the USA military freely admitted that its real mission was to contain the rise of power of certain political factions. And no sooner had American troops been in place to restore democratic elected President Jean Bertrand Aristide in Haiti, the journalists discovered that the very Haitian military bosses who had ousted Aristide in 1991 were on the CIA's payroll before and during Aristide's overthrow. The decision to restore Aristide to power may have been motivated in part by a desire to stem the flow of Haitian refugees to the US, but it's more likely an action that seemed desirable from the US vantage point because of the US could then preside over the election that would ultimately usher him out of office, and his successor would owe his stability to American troops. Indeed, the influence gained by merely having a hand in the change of leadership could be enough to explain Obasanjo's pro-US tendencies, even if no conclusive evidence were found to directly link him to the CIA in regards to Mohammed's assassination. So I'm going to end there. But just to let you know, the CIA always has its hands in the cookie jar. And I just want to say it usually, when it has its hands in the cookie jar, it just wants to take and make things worse than they already are. I hope you got something good out of it. I hope this lets you know why Africans are hopeful of this BRICS and hopeful of the nationalization and hopeful of a Central African or central bank in every African country that is not connected to a Western banking institution. But with that being said, Fula signing out, and Jarama.